Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the new reality that slabbed comics are worthless. All right, because it has to do with Dungeons and Dragons. All right, so first of all, I love Dungeons and Dragons. It's absolutely my number one life changing endeavor, and I think that's another reason why I love Dungeons and Dragons so much is I don't like the idea of a hobby, right? Like, oh, this is your hobby, or like I get it, I get what a hobby is, but I think once I saw what Dungeons and Dragons could do, I'm like, I don't want a hobby, right? Like, here's a good example, like fishing, right? If you fish or if you hunt, that can function as a hobby, but it can also provide for your family, right? You catch a fish, you take it out, you cut its guts open, you clean it the way a fisherman knows how or a fisherwoman knows how, and then you feed people, yourself, your family, your friends, people you don't know, right? Like it's powerfully useful, right? And I think Dungeons and Dragons is the ultimate, right? Gary disguised Dungeons and Dragons as a hobby brilliantly, in my humble opinion, because he knew people were like, hey, you want to labor with me? Hey, you want to eat these vegetables? No, I don't want to do any of that, right? And he was like, hey, you want a hobby? You want a game? Right? And the world bought it, right? And he built this human improvement engine that's disguised like something you want to do. And we've reached a point where this is no longer like, why would you do this? Well, like many companies right now are looking into gamification of work, literal labor, right? And Gary figured this out in 1974 at a level that no one had, at a level no human had ever done, right? So I have a lot of interests, right? And one of them that I've collected comics my entire life. I bought my first comic when I was 6 years old, and it's a pretty transformative day, and but I have a collection of comics, not a huge. I probably have between 1,000, 2,000 comics, and I've sold a lot of comics, right? So all that's left is the stuff I care about, right? And not not even a lot of it is like keys or valuable stuff. It's just valuable to me, right? Emotionally valuable, right? And there are some valuable ones in there, but I don't want to say I know what it means to be a comic book collector, and one I just listened to a video, right, with a guy right here on YouTube, and he was covering another guy who had put kind of a post on Reddit and said that he had literally hundreds of slabbed comics, and he's trying to sell them, and they're worthless, right? They can't even get half of what he bought them for, not even 25%. And what he's been doing is cracking them open, because people will buy them raw. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible, right? So one, I think this has to do with, just the state of the world. But what really I thought was really interesting was the guy, when he talked about it and talked about, well, why is this happening? Why is nobody interested in slabbed comics? And I think what he was, and one thing I thought he said this different, but I'm going to kind of give it to you in the most dramatic way, right? He said, essentially, people who slab comics don't love comics, right? They're taking a comic book, which anybody can sit down and read, and making sure it will never be read by anyone ever again, right? They're not true comic book fans. They don't want, they're value fans. They're fans of value, right? And they're fans of owning a thing and not engaging with the thing, right? And I think that's what I love about Dungeons and Dragons is it is this powerful narrative, right? It is this incredibly useful tool. It's so powerful and so useful and so fundamentally life-changing, and it's the exact opposite of slabbing a comic, right? I love comics. I've never slabbed a comic in my life, right? I want that thing readable. I want to read it 10 times before I die, right? And I want to give it to a friend, and I want them to read it, and I want to get it back, and I want to read it again, and I want to give it to somebody else and get it back and read it again, and like slabbing comics is the worst, right? But for Dungeons and Dragons, it's literally the exact opposite. It's something that the world thinks, oh, you're telling a silly little story. I'm like, no, I am, entering into manifold sentience. I am telling stories in a way that humans have never told stories. I am maximizing what narrative means for humanity, right? I am beyond you. Like, and I think that's what comic slabbers are. They're like behind, right? They're behind the people who buy comics, read comics, give it to their friend, get it back, read it again, right? Like comic slabbers are the worst, period. And now they're suffering because they chose the wrong path. They did comics wrong. Yes, you can do Dungeons and Dragons wrong, in my humble opinion. Yes, you can do comics wrong, in my humble opinion. And we're seeing it. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important parts when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.